Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
I really liked your gift. I hope you'll take it off me tonight. My husband's running late. Lucy picked up her cell phone and checked the call list. She called her husband an hour ago, and he said he was on his way home. Lucy sighed heavily and pushed the bad thoughts away. She spat 3 times over her left shoulder. It's gonna be okay. Mark would be here, and they'd sit down together and celebrate their anniversary. But an hour passed, 2 hours passed, 3 hours passed, and her husband never came home. Lucy kept dialing her husband's cell phone, but a nasty voice kept saying, "The subscriber is temporarily unavailable." During the waiting time, Lucy had time to cry, divorce, kill, and bury her husband in her mind. There was the sound of an incoming message. The number is available for call. Mark didn't pick up the phone until the 3rd time. "Well, what are you calling me?" 42 missed calls. Unhappily answered her incoming call. "Mark, I was actually worried." Lucy began to justify herself. Mark arrived home in the morning. He smelled of feminine perfume. His tie was sticking out of his pants pocket, and on the shoulder of his jacket, she found a faint trace of lipstick. "Where have you been?" Lucy asked her husband, almost crying from her fantasies. "Lucy," Mark wrinkled his forehead. "Let's talk in the morning. I'm very tired." He gently pushed her aside, out of the way, and went straight to the bedroom. He fell on the bed and fell asleep instantly. Lucy looked at her husband, who was sprawled all over the bed, wiped his tears away with her hand. She took a blanket and went to sleep on the couch. She didn't want to sleep in the same bed with her husband. "Thank you, husband, for the party. That's how we celebrated our wedding anniversary," she sighed heavily. In the morning, Lucy woke up to a commotion. Mark was rushing to work, looking for a clean shirt, jacket, and pants, all rattling around in the closet. "Mark, what time is it?" "It's late. Get up or you'll be late for work." "Aren't you gonna drive me?" "Baby, I'm sorry. I can't give you a ride today. I have to meet a client. I'm late already." Mark kissed Lucy on the cheek and ran out of the apartment. A strange feeling of unease swept through Lucy's body. "Well, that I am boiling before time," she calmed herself. If in the morning he ran to the customer, then in the evening was definitely with him. I guess it was a big order, so Mark grabbed it. With her thoughts calmed, Lucy drove to work. "Lucy, you don't look like your husband's been keeping you up all night," Naomi, her coworker. Lucy closed her eyes and rested her head on her desk. "I'm sleepy. I didn't sleep all night. My husband didn't come home until the morning, and he smelled like a woman's perfume." "Whatever you want to think. How did he justify himself?" Naomi asked in surprise. Lucy started massaging her temples. "Well, friend, there's a very good saying. Trust, but verify. You can't trust men. Don't take my example. My husband gave me horns for 3 years, but I believed him and looked into his mouth. The whole town knew that my husband had a mistress, but I didn't know. Until a drunken friend of his told me and twisted his finger around my head. I don't think Mark would do that to me," Lucy replied, but a shadow of doubt crept into her soul. That evening, Mark was late at work again. "Baby, I'm sorry. I'm a little late again, but soon we'll fulfill the terms of the contract and I'll be home on time again." He kissed Lucy on the cheek and went to bed. "Where did they feed you?" Lucy asked him unhappily. "We had a snack at the office. We ordered delivery," on the way Mark answered. He went to bed and instantly fell asleep. Lucy decided to check his phone, but her husband had changed the password. It took a little work to put the right combination of numbers. Lucy found nothing interesting in her husband's phone. All correspondence had been deleted. She found no contacts with unfamiliar names of girls. In the morning, Lucy woke up again to noise. Mark was in a hurry to get to work. "Lucy, help me pick out a shirt and tie my tie because I'm in a hurry." "Baby, you're driving yourself to work again." He smiled guiltily and gave her a peck on the cheek. "Okay, I gotta go. I'm late." Lucy only had time to see his back, which disappeared behind the front door. Mark's cell phone chimed in the bedroom. There you go, Lucy thought. He was in such a hurry that he'd left his cell phone at home. Lucy picked up the phone and opened the incoming message. There was a picture of a slim blonde woman in a red fishnet lingerie set with a caption at the bottom. "I really liked your gift. I hope you'll take it off my hands tonight. You'll take it off me tonight." Lucy looked at the message on her husband's cell phone and tears rolled from her eyes. "Is Mark cheating on me?" Lucy wondered aloud. She took a long look at the picture of the spectacular blonde. "Beautiful," Lucy noted to herself. "He never gave me underwear." Suddenly, Lucy was startled by the ringtone on her cell phone. It was Naomi. "Hey, buddy, how are you getting to work today?" Drive, or my husband's driving us. Or I could pick you up on the way." "That'd be great," Lucy said, sniffling. "What's with the mood?" "My husband screwed up again, so let's get ready and go out quickly." Lucy quickly started to get ready. She put on lipstick, corrected her hair in front of the mirror, twirled her husband's phone in her hands, and after a little thought, put it in her purse. While the friends drove to work, Lucy told Naomi everything in detail, and in the end showed the sent photo. Naomi caught a glimpse of the blonde in the red bathing suit. "You know, Lucy, I think of that picture as a woman of shallow behavior," she thought for a while. Or a lingerie commercial. Although Naomi was silent, staring intently ahead at the road, knowing some conniving women. They'll go to any lengths to steal a man away from his family. Lucy stared blankly out the windshield, listening intently to her friend. "So what's your advice on how to deal with my husband?" Lucy broke the silence. "How?" Naomi, again a little thoughtful, she silently spun the steering wheel, making a right turn, a little forward, stopped at a red traffic light. "You've got a great excuse to stop by his place of work now. You can tell by the look in his eyes. Just don't yell. Just calmly show him the message and watch his reaction carefully." Lucy sighed heavily and wiped away her tears with her hand. "What about work? If I'm late, Evan's going to kick my ass. I was almost an hour late yesterday. If I could just make it to lunch." Lucy was thinking out loud. "No, go now. You'll be exhausted by lunchtime. There's still time. I'll drive you to his office, right up to the parapet. I'm gonna go to work, and I'm gonna come up with something good to get you off the hook." Naomi pulled off the road. "It's settled. We're going to our destination. You'll have a good excuse to hand over the phone and see what he's been doing at work since early morning. What if he's not there?" Lucy gave Naomi a questioning look. "That's when you have to wonder. Where does your husband go in the morning if not to work?" Naomi said calmly. "It's good for you to think. You're calm because it's not about your husband. But I'm pounding, my hands are shaking, and my eyes are wet all the time. Tell me, how can you be so calm when you're like this? If his coworkers see me like this, what will they think of me?" Lucy looked at herself in the mirror. Yeah, she's beautiful. Nose puffy, eyes red like a vampire, deep sadness on her face. Lucy commented as she saw her face. "Even in this state, you look your best. I'm telling you that. I'm telling you that without any help. You're a beautiful girl. You're an excellent student. You're a smart girl. So pull yourself together, put a smile on your face, put sunglasses on your eyes. And voila, no one will ever know you've got a cat on your hands." Naomi stopped the car outside her husband's office, turned to her friend, made a concentrated face. "Well, come on, everybody. Godspeed. Break a leg." She crossed Lucy 3 times and unlocked the doors. "Go ahead and remember, you are the most charming and attractive." Lucy took a handkerchief out of her bag. She blew her nose, wiped her eyes, powdered her face, put on her sunglasses, and got out of the car. As she took the elevator to the 5th floor, Lucy repeated to herself several times, "I'm the most charming and attractive. My husband is crazy about me." Lucy knocked on the door and, without waiting for an answer, went into the office. 3 men, not counting Mark, were leaning over the desk, looking at something, and arguing loudly. When they saw Lucy, they stopped talking and said hello. Lucy apologized and asked her husband to step out into the hallway. "Lucy, what's wrong? Why are you here and not at work?" Mark asked her in surprise when they came out of the office. "You forgot your cell phone at home." She handed him her cell phone and looked him in the eyes. "I was in such a hurry, I didn't even notice." "Thank you, darling." But before she handed him the phone, Lucy opened the message and showed Mark. She took a long look at the picture of the spectacular blonde. "Beautiful," Lucy noted to herself. He never gave me underwear. Suddenly, Lucy was startled by the ringtone on her cell phone. It was Naomi. Hey, buddy, how are you getting to work today? Drive, or my husband's driving us. Or I could pick you up on the way. That'd be great, Lucy said, sniffling. What's with the move? My husband screwed up again, so let's get ready and go out quickly. Lucy quickly started to get ready. She put on lipstick, corrected her hair in front of the mirror, twirled her husband's phone in her hands, and after a little thought, put it in her purse. While the friends drove to work, Lucy told Naomi everything in detail, and in the end showed the sent photo. Naomi caught a glimpse of the blonde in the red bathing suit. You know, Lucy, I think of that picture as a woman of shallow behavior, she thought for a while. Or a lingerie commercial. Although Naomi was silent, staring intently ahead at the road, knowing some conniving women. They'll go to any lengths to steal a man away from his family. Lucy stared blankly out the windshield, listening intently to her friend. So what's your advice on how to deal with my husband? Lucy broke the silence. How? Naomi again a little thoughtful. She silently spun the steering wheel, making a right turn, a little forward, stopped at a red traffic light. You've got a great excuse to stop by his place of work now. You can tell by the look in his eyes. Just don't yell. Just calmly show him the message and watch his reaction carefully. Lucy sighed heavily and wiped away her tears with her hand. What about work? If I'm late, Evan's going to kick my ass. I was almost an hour late yesterday. If I could just make it to lunch, Lucy was thinking out loud. No, go now. You'll be exhausted by lunchtime. There's still time. I'll drive you to his office, right up to the parapet. I'm gonna go to work, and I'm gonna come up with something good to get you off the hook. Naomi pulled off the road. It's settled. We're going to our destination. You'll have a good excuse to hand over the phone and see what he's been doing at work since early morning. What if he's not there? Lucy gave Naomi a questioning look. That's when you have to wonder. Where does your husband go in the morning if not to work? Naomi said calmly. It's good for you to think. You're calm because it's not about your husband. But I'm pounding. My hands are shaking and my eyes are wet all the time. Tell me, how can you be so calm when you're like this? If his co-workers see me like this, what will they think of me? Lucy looked at herself in the mirror. Yeah, she's beautiful. Nose puffy, eyes red like a vampire, deep sadness on her face. Lucy commented as she saw her face. Even in this state, you look your best. I'm telling you that. I'm telling you that without any help. You're a beautiful girl. You're an excellent student. You're a smart girl. So pull yourself together. Put a smile on your face. Put sunglasses on your eyes. And voila, no one will ever know you've got a cat on your hands. Naomi stopped the car outside her husband's office, turned to her friend, made a concentrated face. Well, come on, everybody. Godspeed. Break a leg. She crossed Lucy 3 times and unlocked the doors. Go ahead and remember, you are the most charming and attractive. Lucy took a handkerchief out of her bag. She blew her nose, wiped her eyes, powdered her face, put on her sunglasses, and got out of the car. As she took the elevator to the 5th floor, Lucy repeated to herself several times, I'm the most charming and attractive. My husband is crazy about me. Lucy knocked on the door and, without waiting for an answer, went into the office. 3 men, not counting Mark, were leaning over the desk, looking at something, and arguing loudly. When they saw Lucy, they stopped talking and said hello. Lucy apologized and asked her husband to step out into the hallway. Lucy, what's wrong? Why are you here and not at work? Mark asked her in surprise when they came out of the office. You forgot your cell phone at home. She handed him her cell phone and looked him in the eyes. I was in such a hurry, I didn't even notice. Thank you, darling. But before she handed him the phone, Lucy opened the message and showed Mark. What the hell is this? He scrutinized the picture. The elevator opened on the floor and several people got out. They all went to their offices. Suddenly, I got a chill inside and my eyes went dark because I saw this blonde girl who said hello to Mark and went into the next office. Lucy, without saying a word, silently watched her husband's behavior, but his behavior was impeccable. Finally, Lucy gathered all her inner strength and calmly, without giving the impression that she felt bad and offended, with difficulty said, Why don't you tell me who the author of this creation is? Lucy, I really can't explain anything to you. It's some kind of mistake. Somebody probably got the wrong number. Mark started to make a feeble excuse. Was it the blonde who just said hello to you and walked into the office next door? Lucy stared at her husband. Mark sighed heavily, turned his head to the window and thought for a while. Lucy, yes, it's her, but I swear to you that I'll deal with this issue, and tonight we'll talk about it. Now, he looked pleadingly at his wife. I honestly don't have time. They're waiting for me. You saw it yourself. Mark stopped talking and suddenly choked because the blonde woman came out of the next room. She turned her head toward Mark, smiled slightly at him. She walked gracefully down the corridor, wiggling her hips like a cat. Mark looked back at her and slowly turned his gaze to his wife. Lucy, don't get any ideas. Please go to work. I don't even know her name. Lucy silently turned and walked down the corridor. Mark walked his wife to the elevator with a look, walked into the office. His mind was a mess. He couldn't think of anything, answered questions out of order. It took Mark a while to get his mind right and get back to work. On his lunch break, he decided to clear his head. Mark went down to the small cafe, where all the employees were having lunch, and saw Julia sitting alone at a table and bored. Can I sit at your table and keep you company? Mark asked politely. Hi, Julia said with a smile. Of course, sit down. It will be more fun together. Mark sat down and looked at Julia with undisguised interest. My name is Mark, he said with a charming smile, including all his charm. Are you kidding? Julia laughed back. Not at all. I'm more serious than ever, replied Mark. I would like to know why you sent me a picture of you in your underwear and how you got my phone number. Mark watched the girl carefully. Did you forget that you bought me that set of underwear and put your phone number in my contacts? Mark's face is all stretched out. Mark looked at Julia incredulously. Girl, you're confusing me with someone else. I didn't drink with you for a drink. That's for sure. My memory has never failed me yet. Mark continued uncomplainingly. The girl was looking at him, her eyes giving off a cheerful sparkle. Come on, Mark, let's reminisce together. The day before yesterday in the restaurant next door to our office, you and your friends were celebrating a deal, and my girlfriend and I were sitting at the next table. You kept asking me to dance, and then a button on my blouse came undone near my chest, and you didn't like the color of my underwear. You called a cab and left, and we thought you were going home, but you came back with this red set of underwear, and you made me try it on for the rest of the evening. You also said you had a diamond in the rough, and you couldn't go wrong with the size. Mark listened to the girl with his mouth open, and the further she talked, the more the hair on his head moved, and his eyes got bigger and bigger. Mark swallowed nervously and coughed softly. What happened next? And then you went to see me off, and then I barely got you out of my apartment. Believe me, it wasn't easy. You kept saying you wanted to see your present on me. When I told you I'd send you a picture, you calmed down a little. You took my phone and put your number in my contacts. The reverberations of that night began to echo vaguely in his mind. Mark felt ashamed that he'd had too much to drink that night. Julia, I'm sorry, I don't really drink. I noticed, Julia laughed. Julia, Mark nervously bit his lower lip, loosened his tie and undid the top button of his shirt. I hope nothing happened between us. Mark looked hopefully into her eyes. Mark, who do you think I am? Of course not. Although you were adamant about staying the night. I'm telling you, I barely got you home. By the way, thank you so much for the set. It fit and I love it. It's so expensive. With my salary, I can't afford this kind of underwear. I'd have to work for a month for free to buy it. Mark swallowed nervously and thought to himself, if my wife finds out, she'll kill me. And thought, where the money disappeared from my card, oh, that I transferred Lucy. Mark sighed heavily. So, calmly, no one will know anything. Mark calmed himself and nervously tapped his knuckles on the table. And you really don't remember anything? Julia asked uncertainly. Well, I remember something vaguely. Mark didn't go into details. Scolding himself with the last words, in the shower. It's just that my wife saw your picture on my cell phone. So you're married too? Julia rounded her eyes. Lucy sat at the desk in her office and talked in detail about her meeting with her husband. Naomi listened attentively and didn't interrupt. Yeah, Naomi said thoughtfully as Lucy finished her story. I don't know what to tell you. Friend, it's so confusing. From your story, I understand that they did meet. I'm not saying anything about Mark, but he's hiding something from you. He's hiding from you and he's not telling you. It's obvious. So my advice to you, when your husband tells you the story of that unfortunate photograph, pretend to believe him, but try to ask him some tricky questions and watch him. You'll understand and draw the appropriate conclusions. Look, Naomi's squinting. Maybe we should talk to that blonde hottie. Let's follow her around and nail her to the wall. Lucy listened to Naomi and started thinking out loud. I'm gonna talk to Mark today, and then tomorrow I think we should meet with the Whitehead. Otherwise, I can't live with this rock until I know for sure. Lucy shook her head. All right, Naomi, or we won't be going to the blondes tomorrow, and we'll have to find a new job because we'll be fired for dereliction of duty. Mark picked Lucy up from work. They drove in silence the whole way. No one asked any questions. That had accumulated over the 2 days. Finally, Lucy couldn't take it anymore. Mark, don't you want to explain anything to me? I've been waiting for you to tell me. Lucy, there's nothing to tell. I talked to this Julia, and she told me she had the wrong number. She's not comfortable in front of me. That photo was meant for her boyfriend, not me, and she apologized to me today. That's all. Lucy asked her husband disappointedly. Yes, Mark replied briefly. How did she get your phone number? She was calculating the cost of our project, and our phone numbers were given to her by the management so she could call us directly if she had any questions. Lucy pretended to believe Mark, but knowing her husband, Lucy realized he was lying through his teeth. Okay, Lucy reasoned to herself, we'll go the other way. It was good to be friends with Naomi. Her cheerfulness were enviable. I need her invaluable advice because I'm in such a delicate situation right now, I can't think straight. If it wasn't for Naomi, Lucy would have been a mess. There would have been screaming and crying and snot, maybe some violence, and now, following Naomi's advice, Lucy made a face at a bad game. Mark watched his wife all evening. Eventually, he was convinced that his version was a success. His wife believed him and didn't even ask any questions. In the morning, Mark got up in a good mood, drove Lucy to work, and went to the office with a clear conscience. He met Julia in the elevator. Hi, Mark smiled through his 32 teeth. How are you feeling? Maybe we could have lunch today. Julia gave Mark a pissed-off look. Mark, I have a taboo against married men. It's not acceptable for me to waste my valuable time. From now on, stay away from me, and she defiantly turned her back on him. I didn't feel like it, Mark thought to himself. Only a fool wasted a month's salary on this upstart. Mark's mood had soured a little. He angrily recalled the money he had wasted. Lucy called her husband and told her she'd be late for work. The boss demanded that I work the 2 hours I was absent from work yesterday, she told Mark in a resentful tone. To Mark, you go home, make dinner. I'll come over later. The unsuspecting Mark drove home, sitting along to Max, whose voice sounded melodic on the stereo speaker. Naomi parked her car away from Mark's. They saw Mark come out of the office. Mark left the office and drove home alone. Lucy looked guiltily at Naomi. Maybe we shouldn't have done this. Look, he's going home alone, without the blonde. Well, now that we're here, let's finish the job. If she comes out, we'll just talk to her, and if we don't see her, we won't see her again, replied Naomi, and before she could even finish her sentence, she saw Julia stopping and pulling something out of her purse. Hello, young lady, Naomi approached Julia. Can I ask you a couple of questions? With a charming smile, she turned to her. Julia looked at Naomi questioningly. Who are you exactly? I'm a close friend of Mark's wife, Naomi said in one breath. I didn't know he was married, Julia replied doubtfully. For 40 minutes, Julia sat in the back seat of Naomi's car and told Naomi in detail how and under what circumstances she had met Mark. At first, we just looked at each other on our lunch break, and then we accidentally met in a restaurant. Mark came to our table with a bottle of martini. This is a personal favor from me to you girls. Such beautiful girls should drink the appropriate beverages. He was looking at me with his eyes just drilling a hole in my face. Julia continued her story. I had no idea Mark was married. He was uninhibited and uninhibited. He practically wouldn't give me a pass. He kept asking me to dance. Then he brought this lingerie. Julia bit her lower lip and looked guiltily at Lucy. I'd return the set, of course. But as far as I'm concerned, underwear can't be returned or exchanged. I'm sorry about what happened. Julia kept rubbing her fingers together. As soon as he told me he was married, I cut off all communication with him. Did he want to continue? Lucy asked uncertainly. Yes, he asked me to lunch today. I rudely turned him down. Julia, who knows what would have happened if you were a girl with no principles, Naomi said. He encouraged me to go to bed, but I wasn't going to go to bed with a drunk man. I respect myself, the girl said proudly. When the conversation was over and the girls were alone, Naomi turned her head to Lucy. What do you say? What to say, it's clear. Lucy answered quietly. The affair didn't happen by pure chance. Beyond my husband's control, Lucy continued, and tears involuntarily flowed from her eyes again. Lucy sighed heavily. I'm going to go home and put the dinner piece cooking on his head. I don't have any other options. Obviously, he's an asshole. Naomi's starting to make her point, but there was no cheating. Maybe you should explain to him for the first time that you're forgiving him for the first and last time. Either way, you need to talk to him. You'll see how he behaves, and you'll get a better sense of what's going on, Naomi instructed her friend. Lucy silently wiped the tears that were streaming from her eyes. She couldn't speak. She was so upset that she had a lump in her throat and couldn't speak. She just nodded silently, letting Naomi know that she agreed. That's it. Stop crying, Naomi said affectionately. Let's go to the drugstore. I'll buy you something to calm you down so you can act calmly and appropriately and make decisions with a cool head. Lucy, it's already happened. You already know everything. It's a good thing she was a good girl. She told us everything. And she didn't jump into bed with him right away, which is the most important thing, Naomi said. Do you believe her? Lucy asked her friend and looked at her with her red, tear-stained eyes. A question mark was frozen on her sad face. I don't trust anyone in this life, Lucy. It's like they say. Trust but verify, Naomi rubbed her temples, sighed. She may have kept some of the juicy parts from us. But for some reason, I believe there was no sex between them. Naomi said thoughtfully and stopped the car outside the drugstore. Wait for me here. I'll be right back, she said to Lucy. The house smelled of chicken cooking in the oven. Lucy could smell it in the driveway. Mark met his wife at the door with a smile and kissed her on the cheek. Baby, get undressed. I've got everything ready. Lucy went into the kitchen and saw the table beautifully set. Mark, pleased with his creation, lit the candles and poured the wine. Baby, we never got to celebrate our wedding anniversary. Tonight we're gonna make up for it. Mark handed Lucy a glass of wine. Here's to us, to our happy marriage, and to you and be living to a ripe old age in love and harmony. Mark held out his hand to clink it with his wife's, but Lucy took her hand away. Where's the present for me? Lucy was watching her husband closely. Baby, you've seen that I've been so busy the last few days. I haven't had time to think of a present. But we'll make it up to you later. Mark winked at his wife and held out his glass again. I see, Lucy said sarcastically. The wife will do just fine. I take it you're my present? Of course you spend a lot of money on Julia's present. I never dreamed of such a set of lingerie. It's very expensive for my wife. I don't need a set like that. By the way, Lucy continued her monologue. You should have your paycheck on your card by now. You're not saying anything, Lucy continued calmly. Mark turned pale. His heart did a somersault, his hands trembled, he swallowed nervously, choked, and looked guiltily at his wife. How do you know about Julia? Mark said softly, his eyes downcast. I know everything. Lucy continued to glare at her husband with a hateful look. By the way, she continued, that chicken you cooked today is the last meat in our freezer. My paycheck will go towards the mortgage, and what are we going to eat for a month? I understand your entire paycheck went to a nice gift for Julia. You did a good job. You did a good job. You surprised everyone. I'm very curious, dear husband, how do you know such boutiques with expensive lingerie? Come on, enlighten your wife. We're celebrating 5 years of life together, and as it turns out, I don't know you at all. I just had my eyes opened. You're such a gallant gentleman. You have such a fertile imagination. You took a cab late at night to go to an expensive boutique and buy some fabulous lingerie for a girl you like. How much did she hook you up with her? I didn't expect you to be such a good wooer. Lucy put her wine glass on the table. She took the leg off the chicken, put the potatoes on the plate, and without showing any sign of feeling bitter or heavy, began to eat. Mark stood there silently watching his wife. Finally, he came to his senses a little. "Are we going to stay silent like this?" he asked Lucy a question. "In my opinion, I've been talking all evening," she answered his question in a calm tone. "I wish I could listen to you." Lucy raised her eyes and looked at her husband attentively. "What else should I tell you? You already know everything," Mark replied cynically. Lucy thought that her husband would begin to ask for forgiveness, repent, beg her, but Mark decided that the best defense is offense. So what if he flirted a little with a co-worker? "It's not a crime, and I was drunk and I don't remember. I don't see any reason for a fight." Mark defiantly sat down at the table, drank a glass of wine, and began to put food on his plate. Lucy ate in silence and watched her husband's boorish behavior. Nobody else at the table uttered a single word. Lucy hurriedly ate everything she put on her plate and stood up. "Thank you for dinner," she said, and left the table. "Would you like to keep me company?" Mark looked at Lucy carefully. "Sit with me." "I don't see the point." Lucy smiled at her husband and left the kitchen. Mark remained seated at the table, nervously tapping his knife and fork. How did she know all this, he wondered. Had she talked to Julia, or maybe one of his co-workers had blurted it out? "They were always teasing me when I looked at Julia. I didn't give a shit about that. It'll blow over and calm down." There was no cheating and flirting. "It's not cheating," Mark reassured himself. Lucy turned on the TV, covered herself with a blanket, and lay down on the couch. Julia. Lucy grinned sadly. He was the one who'd gotten it on with Julia, and how many Julias there were, history doesn't tell us. Lucy sighed again. "I should try to go to sleep so I don't have to see or hear him." Lucy mentally told herself what to do. When she heard Mark come out of the kitchen, Lucy closed her eyes and pretended to sleep. "Who's going to clear the table?" Mark asked her in a disgruntled tone. "Lucy, let's be honest. I cook, you clean up." Mark stood by the sofa and looked defiantly at his wife. Lucy did not argue, silently got up and went to the kitchen. Mark followed her. "Why don't you say something?" "Say something," he said to her. "I have nothing to talk to you about." Lucy was struggling. "There's nothing to talk about," Mark said in a tipsy voice. "I'm such a bad husband. I don't help you, I don't pay attention to you, I hurt you." Mark couldn't stop his verbal diarrhea. "You're so good. You're beautiful, you're smart, you always pay your mortgage." Mark emphasized the last word. "Stop explaining," Lucy interrupted her husband. "If you've got a nerve, you better behave yourself. You've got a lot of nerve blaming me for your affairs. I'm disgusted by the whole situation." Lucy couldn't hold it in any longer and started crying. "And you have the nerve to stand in front of me and explain yourself." Lucy said, wiping away her tears, "Do you know that if a husband looks to the left, it's two people to blame?" Mark raised his voice. "Do you know the saying? If you feed the wolf, he's still looking in the woods," Lucy said. "What's wrong with you that you're running to the side? What's my fault? You're always washed, your clothes are ironed, I always cook, so that God forbid you don't go hungry." Lucy looked at her husband defiantly. "I've always thought we were pretty good at intimacy." Mark couldn't stop, not realizing he'd fallen into the role of the heroic lover. "So something was missing. Draw conclusions and correct your mistakes," he said defiantly, looking at Lucy point blank. "Oh, that's it, huh? You've said it all." Lucy rounded her eyes and looked into his shameless face. "I said it all," Max replied and went into the bedroom. "Let others live with a bore like you," Lucy shouted after him. "Yes, others will be just happy, and you are already stale," replied Mark and closed the door to the bedroom on the other side. "That's the talk," Lucy said to herself. "Let him find himself another fool, so that he that and licked, and he will look at others." Bitterly grinned Lucy and quietly cried. "Tomorrow I will file for divorce. Live with this bore and Walker I'm not going to. Let him continue to drag on Julia, Masha, Dasha. I already do not care. I made a final decision for myself. In my plans for the future, he has no place. Lucy, I'm sorry." Mark came up to her this morning and put his hands on her shoulders. "I don't know what came over me." Mark tried to justify himself. "I was up all night thinking, and it wasn't until this morning that it started to dawn on me. What am I doing? I love you and I don't want to lose you." Lucy lowered her eyes to the floor and listened to her husband in silence. "If you give me one chance, I'll try to take it." Mark kept looking at his wife, but Lucy remained silent. "Baby, let's get you to the office." After a few minutes of silence, Mark suggested. "No, me," Lucy replied laconically. "Baby, it's my fault, I admit it, but let's think about it before we make any rash decisions." "Really, Lucy, nothing happened. Nothing could have happened. I don't need anyone but you." Lucy was glad to hear her husband's words of remorse, but the resentment was still weighing heavily on her soul. She was not ready to forgive him now. After last night's conversation with her husband, which had turned into a scandal, Lucy had been in the mood for divorce all morning, but now her heart was shaking and she was having second thoughts. "I need to think hard," Lucy replied in a calm tone. Mark smiled and kissed his wife gently on the cheek. "Of course, baby, just think very carefully." He wrapped his two arms around her waist, lifted her up and began to twirl her around. "Mark, let me go right now," Lucy said sternly. "Otherwise we'll be late for work." At work, Lucy told Naomi, as usual, how her husband had behaved last night and this morning. "I don't know what to tell you," she said after some thought. "If you want to keep your family together, you can forgive, of course." "What would you do if you were me?" Lucy asked. "You, and spit over Naomi's left shoulder. "I don't want to be in your shoes. I'm fine where I am," Naomi smiled. "To be honest, I'm in favor of keeping the family together," Naomi said confidently. "You can't just forgive right away. You have to take a little time to build up some resentment. Let Mark be nervous. Let him be nervous. Let him be nervous. Let him be happy. Naomi, let's go to a cafe after work today. Sit down and relax. For as long as I can remember, 5 years of marriage, I've been running home. And in the end, what I got was that no one needed it, no one appreciated it. I've turned into some kind of a homebody. I don't want to go home today. I can't see or hear him yet. I know I'm doing the wrong thing, but that's the way I want to do it. Let's do it." Naomi said sure. "I haven't been out on my own in a long time. Home, work, home. And there will be nothing to remember in my old age," smiled her friend. Mark picked up his wife at work. Lucy went to her husband's car and showed him to roll down the window. "Mark, I'm going to the cafe tonight. I'll be late. Naomi and I are having a little sit down. We've done our quarterly report. We're celebrating." Mark made a disgruntled face. "Lucy, you're doing this to spite me. You're driving a wedge." He looked at his wife questioningly. "Get back at me, and then we'll have nothing to glue together. Think what you want. I warned you." Lucy went to the car where her friend was waiting. "Did you resent it?" Naomi asked. "I don't care. I'm not ready to listen to his dithyrambs all night. I don't believe a word he says, and my trust in him is shot. I just want to relax." Lucy buckled her seatbelt. "Let's go," she said cheerfully. Mark came home all worked up. Not only is there no dinner and the fridge is empty. He'd already worn a shirt to work today that wasn't fresh, but he kept silent in the morning. He's in no position to poke his wife and express his displeasure. Mark gathered up all his shirts and loaded them into the washing machine. "What the fuck do I need a wife for?" Mark said to himself. "If I'm gonna do everything myself. She's eating and drinking delicacies, and I have to eat if the refrigerator's full." Mark sighed heavily. He felt uneasy. She better not do anything, or she'll decide to get back at me. "Let her try," he grumbled to himself. Then after some thought, he took out his cell phone and texted his wife on Viber. "I'll pick you up. Text me when and where to pick you up." Lucy got the message from her husband and smiled and read it to her friend. "See, she's worried, afraid of losing you. That's great." Leaning back in her chair, Naomi smiled and began to express her opinion. If only, Lucy laughed. She'd rather not lose her free housekeeper. "Good job, hubby." He went into the closet and got clean clothes. He went into the refrigerator and got ready to eat food. Now he's gonna get a little action. I'm gonna take a little rest and see how long he's gonna last. I know he's broke, but I'm not gonna help him. I don't think he'll have money to put gas in his car tomorrow, but if I give him money for gas, I'll drive it myself. I'll throw him glamorous parties. He'll suck his paycheck, go work as a night watchman. How did he want it? Just like that." Lucy poured herself a mineral water, looked around and drank the water. "If you don't like it, I'm not holding anyone back," she said and put the empty glass on the table. "Well, you do not boil," soothed Lucy friend. "You shouldn't throw away men too much. Mark's not all bad. The important thing is that he realizes what he did was disgusting and draws the necessary conclusions. Listen, I like your offer to be a caretaker, but not a caretaker, of course." Naomi thought about it for a while and then continued. "I have a relative who works nights at the supermarket. As a merchandiser, she puts stuff on the shelves, paid by the hour. She gets paid by the hour. Send Mark over there. Let him do some physical work with his hands in his spare time. My relative says they're always in need of workers." "Ooh, that's a great idea. Naomi, you're a genius. I'm gonna talk to him today. But next time he'll think it's worth it to look around and go out with someone." Lucy looked thoughtfully at Naomi and put her hands on the table. "I can imagine my husband's face when I tell him my proposal." Lucy grinned and covered her face with her hands. "Maybe you can do without the part-time job?" Naomi asked. "We'll get a quarterly bonus this month." Naomi looked at her friend with a smile. "That's out of the question," Lucy said flatly. "I'm gonna spend my bonus on my own needs. I'm done sagging on myself. Or I'll buy expensive lingerie." Lucy emphasized the word lingerie. "Or I'll spend it at the beauty parlor. I want to do chocolate wrapping, sugaring, mesotherapy for my face, eyebrow correction. I need to do a lot of things. I don't have enough for all my wants and bonuses." "But for your friend," Naomi said. "You'll teach your husband a lesson and enjoy yourself. Finally, you'll learn to appreciate and respect yourself." "There's no other way," Lucy replied, taking another sip of mineral water. "Let him write in advance or borrow from his parents. I don't care. And let him think how he will pay off. I'll transfer my salary tomorrow for the mortgage and put him in front of the fact." For the second week, Mark has been working as a merchandiser at the local hypermarket. At his main job, he finishes working at 5 o'clock in the evening, and his part-time job starts at 7 o'clock in the evening until 10 o'clock. On Friday and Saturday, Mark goes out for the whole night. When his wife proposed to him, he resented Lucy for putting him on such tight terms. But there was no choice, so he had to take it. At first, it was hard for him to combine two jobs. Mark would come to the office for his day job, broken, tired, and irritable. But now he's getting the hang of it, and he's even starting to like it. Lucy got her bob cut, her hair highlighted, her eyebrows done, and most importantly, she bought herself an expensive set of lingerie, much cheaper than Mark had given Julia, but still not cheap. Mark went down to the local cafe on his lunch break and saw Julia picking out a milkshake. When she saw Mark, she gave him a little wave and a smile. "How could I ever fall for her? She's not even close to my wife," Mark thought to himself as he waved back. "Or Lucy's my beauty, height and figure and breasts, everything about her. And Julia's not like her manicure or her hair. A young girl, unmarried, with her hair in a bun, lazy to do her hair in the morning." Mark silently approached the receptionist and started reading the menu. "What's up, Mark?" Julia asked him cheerfully. "You know we're celebrating another big deal tomorrow. Are you in or what?" Julia asked him sarcastically, a spark of fire in her eyes as she watched her companion with amusement. "Or what?" Mark said grudgingly. "So you're not going? Too bad." Julia made a sad face and then laughed. "I thought you were going to get a little naughty again." She squinted one eye. "I liked it last time." "Did you?" "I didn't like it," Mark told her unhappily. "Why so?" Julia rounded her eyes. "I think you had the most fun. After that party and that picture you sent to my phone. My wife almost divorced me." Mark thought about it for a while and then continued. "I love my wife and I don't want to lose my family. Lucy came home from work, cooked dinner, mopped the floors, watched the local news on TV, called her mom. She looked at her watch. Mark's working tonight. He'll be late," Lucy reasoned to herself. "I'll go to the store and get some bread for toast," Lucy decided, "and I'll make toast for breakfast in the morning." Lucy returned from the store with a full bag of groceries. It was dark on the first floor. Lucy called the elevator. A man came out of the apartment across from the elevator, smelling like booze. "Hi, neighbor," he said to Lucy, barely standing on his feet. "Do you have a cigarette?" The neighbor pressed Lucy against the wall with his body, blowing his bad breath on her. "I don't smoke," Lucy replied. "Tell me you don't drink," The neighbor pressed his body even harder against her and nuzzled his nose into her neck. "You're delicious." "Young man, leave me alone." "I'm going to scream and raise all the neighbors on their feet." Lucy began to speak as sternly as possible, pushing the man away from her. "Well, try," with a sneer replied the neighbor, pressing even harder against Lucy. "Help?" Lucy began to scream, and the neighbor's huge palm covered her mouth. "Wow, what a nimble little goat. I love a girl like that." He opened his apartment door and forced Lucy in, slammed the door shut with his foot, and dragged her into her room. Lucy resisted as best she could, but the man was much stronger. He was amused by the whole situation, reveling in his advantage, pushing Lucy down on the bed, piling his weight on top of her. "You're still thinking about resisting, goat," he said, his hands roaming over her body. "Don't touch me, please," Lucy cried. But the man didn't hear her, unzipping her pants with one hand and squeezing her neck with the other. Lucy sat on the bed, sobbing and wiping away the tears running down her cheeks. "Come on, don't cry," the neighbor soothed her with a drunken voice. "It's your own fault. There's nothing to walk alone at night." He collapsed on the bed and, not paying attention to her tears, stretched, yawned loudly, and almost immediately fell asleep. Lucy looked disdainfully at the drunken man, who slept soundly and sniffled with pleasure. She sighed heavily, wiped her tears. She got up, got dressed, and barely made her way home. At home, she went straight to the shower. She scrubbed herself with a washcloth several times, as if she wanted to wash away the shame. Lucy was disgusted by what had happened to her an hour earlier. "Why did I go to that store? How am I supposed to live with this stone on my heart?" Lucy berated herself, remembering over and over again that horrible evening. Lucy decided not to tell Mark about the drunken neighbor. She was ashamed to even remember about it, and to tell her husband was even more ashamed. But to her trusted friend Naomi, Lucy recounted every detail in the morning at work. "Maybe you should have called the police and reported the rape," Naomi asked cautiously. "Yeah, and the whole house would know I was raped and point fingers at me." "Thank you, Naomi," Lucy tearfully told her, "but I don't want that kind of fame for myself." "Will you tell Mark?" Naomi asked cautiously. "I'm ashamed to tell him," Lucy cried again. "I know I should tell my husband, but I can't dare." Lucy covered her face with her hands. "Then forget it and don't tell anyone else, and don't even remember it again. I think your neighbor was so drunk he won't even remember you. So my advice to you, when you see him, pretend you don't know him and nothing happened between you ever. Just erase it from your life, forget it, and don't torture yourself with memories. It was out of your own control. It's not your fault. You, Lucy, are to blame for that creep being your neighbor." Naomi had calmed Lucy down a bit, but still the wound was fresh, and as Lucy walked by the apartment, her heart pounded like a hammer on an anvil. She thought the door would open and those strong hands would drag her back into the apartment, onto that filthy bed, and she breathed in the foul smell of pepper again. But Lucy never met her neighbor again, and little by little she began to come to her senses. The pain subsided a little. This hard case began to be forgotten, until one morning she was sickened by the sight of food on the table, and at work Lucy almost fainted on her lunch break. Good thing it was her trusty friend Naomi who picked Lucy up and kept her from falling to the floor. "Lucy, are you pregnant by any chance?" Naomi asked her with a smile. "I don't know," answered Lucy quietly. "I'll take a pregnancy test tonight. If anything, you'll be the first to know the result," Lucy continued. The test showed 2 stripes. Under different circumstances, Lucy would have jumped for joy and happiness and run straight to Mark to tell her the good news. But now Lucy wasn't sure it was Mark's baby. Today was Lucy's last day at work. Starting tomorrow, she'll be on maternity leave. "How's the move, girlfriend?" Lucy asked Naomi cheerfully. "I'm gonna miss you so much," Naomi continued in a distraught voice. "Who am I gonna share my secrets with?" Naomi puckered her lips, exhaled heavily, and looked regretfully at Lucy. "We have cell phone service, thank God, and no one's canceling it yet. So don't even think you'll be without my eternal questions and misunderstandings. You'll be looking for your smart and necessary advice and answers," Lucy answered her. Naomi smiled. "I hope you don't need any more of my advice. Mark is over the moon to be a father. The baby will be born, and you'll have a normal, full-fledged unit of society." Lucy wrapped her arms around her head and sighed heavily again. "That's what I'm most afraid of. When my daughter is born, that's when the deception will be revealed. What if she looks like her birth father, for crying out loud? That's when I'll be in trouble. I can't sleep or eat. I can't sleep or eat, Lucy said irritably and put her hands on the table. Don't think about it, Naomi said, winking at her friend. Maybe the doctors were wrong about the due date and it will be Mark's baby. Naomi winked at Lucy again. You'll see, you'll be fine. We'll get through this. You're gonna have a daughter and then you'll figure it out, and I'm telling you, it's not the first time. Don't torture your soul, but accept the birth of your little girl as a gift of fate. You don't know if Mark is having male problems and can't have kids. Naomi thought about it for a while. And then there's this coincidence. If you look on the bright side, your Markusha has a bit of a problem too, and anyway, let's drop it. I'll go put the kettle on and cut the cake, and you call the girls from the neighboring departments. We'll have tea and let you go home early. Naomi took a knife, napkins, disposable plates, and went to prepare the table for tea. Lucy went into the building, pressed the button, and waited for the elevator. Someone was following her, but Lucy didn't look back. She and her husband had recently moved and did not communicate with anyone, only greeted the neighbors in the morning for the sake of propriety, and that was the end of all communication. When Lucy heard that they started to open the door with the key on the first floor, she turned her head and saw the face of the man she didn't want to meet. Lucy breathed hard and fast, and a small shiver ran through her body. The neighbor opened the door, but before entering the apartment, he stopped abruptly, stood for a moment, turned his head and stared at Lucy, then looked down at her stomach. The man was very well dressed and smelled of expensive male perfume. Lucy turned pale and swayed slightly. The man supported her lightly by the shoulders. "Young lady, are you all right?" He looked at her face carefully. No, I'm sorry, I just got a little wobbly. I get that a lot." The elevator doors opened and Lucy took a step, then out of fear, lost her balance, and started to tumble sideways. The man stepped into the elevator with her and supported her by the shoulder. "I can't leave you like this. I'll walk you to your apartment." Lucy felt she couldn't walk to the door without help. Her legs were shaking, her head was spinning, and she didn't have the strength to object or refuse help. "What floor?" he asked Lucy calmly and pressed the button. Lucy started to open the door, but she couldn't open it. Her hands were shaking, her eyes were dark, and she couldn't get the key into the keyhole. The man took the keys from her, opened the door, and helped her into the house. He took off Lucy's boots, coat, scarf. He opened the window, sat down on the armchair across from her, and scrutinized her. "How are you feeling?" he asked Lucy concernedly. "Thank you, I'm fine. I'm just dizzy. I get dizzy sometimes." "My name's Harry, by the way." Lucy cleared her throat a little and spoke softly. "Nice to meet you. I'm Lucy." "Nice to meet you," Harry smiled. "Who are you expecting? A boy or a girl?" He stared at Lucy. "A girl," Lucy said even more quietly, and for the first time she looked openly into her companion's face. Harry did not take his eyes off Lucy. He looked at her carefully and smiled with the corner of his lips. "You and I have never crossed paths before, and your face looks very familiar to me." No, I've never seen you before. I have a very good memory for faces." Lucy lowered her eyes and looked at her hands. "Thank you for helping me." Lucy started to get up from the couch, letting her roommate know to leave her and go home. Lucy closed the door behind her neighbor and slowly lowered herself onto the couch. Lucy closed her eyes and leaned against the wall. She thought Harry was a hopeless drunk with no morals. But now she saw a different side of him. "I guess I was wrong about him. He doesn't look like a drunkard or a philanderer. I wonder if he's married," Lucy wondered to herself. And actually, what does it matter? She answered her own question. "I haven't seen him for 6 months. I hope I won't see him for a few more years." Lucy got up and went to the kitchen, washed herself an apple, sat on the couch, and turned on the TV. She couldn't get the image of her neighbor out of her head. "Thank God he doesn't remember me," Lucy thought, and exhaled the air from her lungs. "I can't do anything else but think about him." Lucy lay down on the sofa, covered herself with a blanket, and closed her eyes. "I'll get some rest and then I'll call Naomi," Lucy thought, and almost immediately fell into a deep sleep. Naomi listened attentively to Lucy and occasionally commented, "You say you're not a drunk. That's good. You know, honey, heredity is the ability of an organism to pass on its genes, if anything." Genes, Lucy sighed heavily, but I felt a little uneasy. He was looking at me so intently, like he was trying to remember something. Come on, don't worry about it. The man didn't just walk past a pretty pregnant girl, that's all. Just go on with your life and don't worry about it, Naomi told her friend on the phone. Harry went home, went to the window and thought about it for a while. I've definitely met her somewhere. I can't help but think I know her. Harry stood by the window for a long time thinking about Lucy. Her image never left his mind. Where have I seen you before, pretty girl? You say it's the first time you've seen me, but I can see in your frightened eyes that you're lying. Harry stared off into the distance, thoughts swarming through his mind. He shook his head. Stop exercising your brain. I'm gonna drill holes for a shelf in the bathroom, Harry told himself and got to work. 6 months ago, Harry divorced his wife and moved into this apartment he inherited from his grandfather. It was a shabby apartment, but in the meantime, Harry had done some expensive renovations and bought new furniture and appliances and all the essentials. Harry stayed with a friend during the renovation and only recently moved into his own apartment. He didn't really know any of the neighbors. And when he saw Lucy today, her face looked painfully familiar. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with Lucy, Harry said aloud to himself. Maybe I've seen her before. I just remembered her pretty face, interesting features, just a pretty girl, that's all. Now the girl's pregnant. She's about to have a baby. She's gonna be a mom. A call on his cell phone brought Harry out of his reverie. A colleague at work had called and asked him to look at sketches and designs for an ad for a major retailer. You throw me all the material to email. I'll look at everything and write my comments and wishes. I'll throw all you to finalize if anything. Harry answered him and disconnected the phone. After talking to Naomi, Lucy pressed the red button on her phone and decided to treat her husband to a romantic candlelit dinner. I'm on maternity leave, Lucy thought, for good reason. It's been a long time since my husband and I had a candlelight dinner, Lucy thought to herself as she pulled a frozen chicken out of the freezer. Mark came home and drooled at the smell coming from the kitchen. Lucy came out into the hallway and kissed Mark on the cheek, greeting her husband with a smile. Hurry up and get undressed. I've got everything ready. I'll feed you. Mark went into the kitchen and saw a beautifully set table. Wow, baby, it's beautiful. He hugged his wife and kissed her softly on the lips. You are my hostess. My hostess has golden hands. Gently stroking her tummy, Mark said affectionately. But baby, don't be offended. I'm going to my part-time job today. They called me and asked me to come, so I couldn't say no. I'm going to try your culinary masterpiece and run. Mark looked at Lucy with loving eyes. Oh baby, no offense. What can I do with you? You workaholic. Lucy looked down at the floor. Go make some money. You're gonna need it. Lucy gently stroked her husband's head. You've been working a lot of night shifts, darling. Lucy looked into Mark's eyes and she thought he looked away from her. Baby, if you don't feed me now, I'm gonna have to go to work hungry. Mark stroked Lucy's tummy again, leaned over and kissed it gently. How is our baby feeling? Wonderful, Lucy said and began to feed her husband. Hello. Hey, buddy. Lucy started the call. You're not gonna believe this, but I've missed you, and I need your valuable advice. Maybe I should get a job as a counselor, Naomi laughed. I think your valuable advice would be worth all the gold, replied Lucy with a laugh. Keep praising me, I love it, Naomi continued in a satisfied tone. Lynn, I think Mark has someone, Lucy said seriously. Naomi stopped talking, then coughed into the phone. Why would you suddenly jump to that conclusion? Did Mark give you a reason to think that? It hit me today, and I think my gut was right. I made him a candlelit dinner and he ate quickly and went to his part-time job. He could have said no. It's voluntary. He could have gone tomorrow. He used to do that when he didn't want to go. And his eyes were so guilty. Lucy continued her conversation in a sad voice. You're a real piece of work, Naomi said after listening to Lucy's story. He's coming over today. Smell his clothes. Try to stand up and look into his eyes. I think you'll understand right away. We'll call tomorrow and talk about it. I hope you're wrong, Naomi said in a confident tone. I hope to God I'm wrong, Lucy said with a sigh. But my heart is not in it, Lucy continued sadly. While it was still light outside, Lucy decided to take a walk and get some fresh air. She dressed warmly and went outside. In the yard, the neighborhood kids were walking. Some of them were riding bicycles, some were rollerblading, and there were little kids swinging on swings. Lucy stopped and looked at the playground. Soon I'll be walking here with my little girl, Lucy thought. Gently stroked her tummy, her eyes rounded, and a small chill ran through her body. Harry was walking toward her. He had a bag of groceries in one hand and a window cleaner in the other. Lucy wanted to turn around and go the other way, but her legs wouldn't budge. Harry saw Lucy from a distance and quickened his pace. He noticed that when Lucy saw him, she was a little confused and wanted to turn around and walk away. But at the last moment she changed her mind and stayed where she was. Why is she avoiding me? Harry thought to himself. There's something wrong here, something that needs to be sorted out. Hello again, Lucy. Harry greeted her cheerfully. It's good to see you in good health and good spirits. Harry watched Lucy's demeanor carefully. Lucy choked a little. It's good to see you too, she replied with a strained smile. Thank you again for helping me get to my apartment today. You're welcome. Anything you need, I'm always at your service, Harry replied. He looked at Lucy intently. His gaze made Lucy feel uncomfortable. Yeah, I thought I'd get some fresh air before I went to bed, she answered his question. Good night, Lucy said with a strained smile and walked straight down the sidewalk. Harry stood staring at his roommate for a while. No, I won't sleep tonight if I don't remember how I know you, Harry said thoughtfully. It's not funny anymore, Lucy said quietly, a little flustered. This Harry is becoming very much a part of my life. Shoving her hands in the pockets of her coat, Lucy reasoned with herself. Her cheeks were burning and a slight chill ran through her body. Lucy couldn't tell whether she was cold or nervous. I don't know why I'm making myself so nervous. He obviously doesn't remember anything. Lucy exhaled heavily. It was nice until I met this Harry guy. It was starting to get a little dark when Lucy came back from her walk. She got to her driveway and saw her neighbor again, standing outside smoking. I don't need this. He's going to be a nuisance to me all the time, Lucy's nervousness returned. Harry kept looking out the window, waiting to see a familiar silhouette on the horizon. As soon as he saw Lucy in the distance, he grabbed his jacket and went outside. God, I'm acting like a boy, Harry thought to himself. Why do I need all this? Pregnant girl, probably has a husband, and I'm like a fool. Cancer, all evening in front of her tap dancing. You can see with the naked eye that she doesn't like me. Good evening again, Harry smiled. I wouldn't be surprised if she told me to go fuck myself, he thought to himself. Good evening, Lucy replied sternly and walked past Harry. Harry quickly snuffed and tossed his cig.Rita into the trash can and hurried after Lucy. At the elevator, Lucy turned around and looked at Harry perplexed. Is there something you want to ask me? He asked Lucy. No, she answered briefly and stepped into the elevator. Lucy looked at her watch again. It was midnight and Mark wasn't home. He was usually home by this time. Lucy was dozing off when she heard the key turn in the front door. Lucy got up, turned on the light and went to meet her husband. Mark, what took you so long, and why did you answer my calls? Lucy began to curse, squinting against the light. Baby, I texted you. I'm gonna be a little late. Go to bed. Don't wait up for me. Yes, they asked me to stay a little late and help put the goods on the shelves. Mark started to justify himself. Lucy made a face. Mark, have you been drinking? Do you smell of alcohol? Just a little bit, he smiled. Go to bed, baby. I'll go to the bathroom and go to bed. Lucy's sleep had finally passed. She too went to the bathroom and ostentatiously began to smell his hair, clothes, which he threw in the drawer for dirty laundry. Why did your sweater smell like women's perfume? She asked calmly, watching Mark's reaction closely. What do you mean? Mark asked her in surprise. What do you mean it smells like women's perfume? He shrugged his shoulders involuntarily. How should I know? We have a lot of women working here. He raised his eyebrows in surprise and looked at Lucy. You're jealous of me, Mark smiled. I'm not jealous. I'm putting you on notice that lately I don't like your behavior. And if I find out that you are cheating on me again, I will not look at my pregnancy. Lucy finished her monologue and left the bathroom. Mark lay down next to his wife on the bed. I don't think I gave you any reason to. Mark got a text message on his WhatsApp. Give me your phone, please. Lucy held out her hand. What do you need it for? I want to see who's texting you so late at night. Look at this. Mark handed Lucy's phone to her. "It's okay," it says in the message. "The name Alex is in the contacts." Lucy calmly entered the number into her phone. "Why would you do that?" Mark asked in surprise. "I must have the numbers of all your friends. I'm pregnant. You never know," Lucy replied. In the morning, Lucy woke up with a headache. She didn't want to get out of her warm bed, but she had to see her husband off to work. "Mark," she turned to him as she put a mug of tea and hot sandwiches on the table. "Maybe you won't take the part-time job for a while. I'll get my paycheck, vacation pay, maternity pay, and vacation pay. It's not a small amount. We'll have enough for a while, and then we'll see what happens. I feel sorry for you. You work hard, you don't get enough sleep, and then you have to go to work early in the morning." Mark was eating his sandwich, almost choking on it. "Baby, you're so hard to please. You're forcing me to take a part-time job, and now you're doing the opposite. Make up your mind what you want me to do. I'm just getting into it, and I need the money." "All right, I'm off." He kissed Lucy on the cheek. "Thank you, darling. It was delicious." Lucy's lips curled in displeasure. "Mark, I can hardly see you. It's not normal. I can't be alone all the time." Mark opened the front door. He turned around and looked at his wife. "Lucy, we'll get back to you on this, I promise you." He waved goodbye and sent an air kiss. Lucy sighed heavily and went straight to the bedroom. Lucy woke up to the intrusive ringing of her cell phone. "Hi, young mom-to-be." Naomi greeted her. "Hi," Lucy answered in her sleep. "I called at a bad time. Did I wake you up?" "It's okay," Lucy said. "It's time to get up." "Yeah. Mark came in really late last night while I sniffed him all over." Lucy laughed while she checked her phone. "I fell asleep very late." "So what conclusions did you draw?" Naomi asked cautiously. "The suspicions only grew stronger," Lucy replied, almost crying. Lucy told Naomi about her neighbor. "To be honest, Naomi, Harry really pissed me off yesterday with his obsession." Then she talked about the message that had come to her husband's cell phone the night before. Naomi listened attentively, trying not to interrupt, only occasionally putting in a word to reassure her. When Lucy finished her story, Naomi sighed heavily. "Why am I calling? I have two pieces of news. One good, one bad. Which one should I start with?" "Let's go with the good one," Lucy said uncertainly, and she felt a sense of impending anxiety, but she pulled herself together. "Anyway, Lucy, I know a girl who's been working at the same place as Mark for a week now. She's separated from her husband, she's short of money, so she decided to make some money." Lucy's tense, and Naomi's been quiet for a while. "Go on," Lucy broke the silence. "I didn't say anything to you after we talked yesterday, but I asked her to keep an eye on your husband. Anyway, Lucy, he wasn't at work yesterday or the day before." "Lucy, don't worry, it doesn't mean anything." "But girl, I could not tell you that information. I've been thinking about it all morning." Naomi sighed heavily into the phone. "It was a relief to tell you. You did the right thing, Naomi. Better the bitter truth than the sweet lie." "Thank you, Naomi. You're a true friend." Lucy had tears in her eyes. She wiped them away with her hand and blew her nose. "Lucy, you're crying, so I can't leave you like this," Naomi continued. "Go outside. I'm on my way to your place. Let's not get caught up in the coffee grounds. We're going to Mark's work." "Do you think we should go?" Lucy asked her friend. "I think we should. It's a good time to dot all the I's and T's." Lucy started to get ready to go out, her head hurting, her mood low. "It's lunchtime. I'll tell him everything. I'll see how he'll defend himself. Maybe I'll tell him it's not his child, so he won't feel ashamed of me." Lucy was determined. She went outside and noticed that a car had pulled up and Harry had gotten out. When she saw her neighbor, she was even more angry. "Lucy, hello," he smiled. "Hello, I don't think we've ever been on a first-name basis," she said sharply, turning away from Harry. "I'm sorry, Lucy. I can't get your face out of my head. I feel like we've met before, but I can't remember where." Lucy turned to Harry, looked at him angrily and said, "I don't know where we met." "You want to know where we met? You definitely want to know that. You won't regret it later." She continued to watch him with hatred. "Very much," he answered calmly. "It's been bugging me. What are you so worked up about? Are you in trouble?" "You shouldn't be worried." He continued their pep talk with concern for her well-being. "Actually, I got into trouble as soon as I met you for the first time," Lucy continued to talk and stare at her interlocutor with hatred. I don't understand you. I don't understand you, Harry shrugged. Why? How could I have offended you? A question mark froze on his face. Because you drunkenly raked me in this very apartment on a dirty old mattress. Do you understand now? Naomi pulled up and Lucy walked to her car without another word. Harry grabbed her arm. Lucy, I'm not letting you go until you tell me what's going on. Harry could see that Lucy was in no condition to talk to him. She started to pull her hand out, so Harry let her go and watched as she got into the car with her friend. The car was long gone, and Harry stood there, unable to believe what was happening. 6 months ago, Harry had divorced his wife. The divorce had been difficult. Suddenly, details of his family life came to light. Harry was not only raising a child that wasn't his own, but he was also supporting his wife's lover. When the truth came out, his wife ripped him off. Harry took Omi a suitcase with his belongings and army photos. He didn't care about any of that, just as long as the nightmare was over. The amount of dirt his ex-wife poured on Harry in court was like dipping him in a bucket of slop. Harry never even realized what a disgusting person he was. After the divorce, he moved into his grandfather's apartment and just got so drunk that he stopped recognizing his family and friends. He lived at his grandfather's apartment for a week, and then his parents couldn't stand it and took Harry home and put him under strict control. As a result of his parents' efforts, Harry came out of his binge, got his mind right, went to work, and started renovating. Harry moved into his renovated apartment, meets Lucy unexpectedly, and despite the fact that she's pregnant, loses his peace and sleep. Now he was standing in the street and remembering his dream, which had been etched in his memory and would not leave his head. It had been a long time, and Harry remembered the dream, every detail of it. Of course, now the puzzle had all come together in his mind. Lucy, the girl from his dream. He could see her face clearly in his mind's eye. Oh my God, I can't believe it was real and I really did abuse that girl. Harry clenched his fists with all his might and bit his lip. At that time, he hated all the women of the planet Earth. It seemed to him that all women are corrupt and all, without exception, cheat their husbands. What do I do now? How do I beg Lucy's forgiveness? Harry said to himself. You should have gotten so drunk, lost your human form, and started throwing yourself at a defenseless girl. Harry's hands shook with excitement and his palms sweated. I wonder how old she is, and why I never see her with her husband. She goes out alone in the evenings. Maybe she doesn't have a husband, then it could be my baby. Come on, that's absurd. Harry continued to collect his thoughts. Harry was ashamed of his piggish behavior. How am I gonna look her in the eye now? She could file a police report and I could go to jail. The question swarmed in his head. How can I beg her forgiveness if she won't even talk to me? Poor girl. She should have gotten under my skin. I hate myself for that. I have to talk to her, apologize, maybe even give her some money. What if it's my baby? Harry smiled dreamily, yeah. Roll up your lip, Harry, and stop dreaming. Harry took his cell phone out of his pocket and called work. I have an emergency today. If you have anything urgent, email me. I'll be working remotely today. Harry hit the off button. Don't run away from me, Oleshka. Today you and I will definitely talk. And dot all the I's. The story is gaining momentum, Harry said seriously and sighed heavily. Lucy got into the car with Naomi in the passenger seat and couldn't get her belt into the latch to buckle herself in. Lucy, what's wrong with you? You don't look so upset about Mark, her friend asked worriedly. Lucy, we don't know anything yet. There's no telling where he might be. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just find out first and then we'll think about it. You know what, Naomi? Lucy turned to face her. I'm not going anywhere. I don't want to confront him at work. I have so much to say to him. When he comes home tonight, we can talk about it in peace. I think he has something to say to me too. Lucy took a big breath and then took a big breath. Naomi, stop the car around the corner. We're gonna sit and talk for a while. I'm gonna go home. I don't want to see that Harry guy again. If I meet him now, I'll bite him like a dog. I've got nothing to lose. I told him everything. He's the one who was standing outside your apartment with you, Naomi asked. You told him everything? Naomi looked at Lucy with wide open eyes. Almost, Lucy said in a detached voice, but she didn't say anything about the father. Naomi's face stretched out. Lucy recounted the whole conversation with her neighbor. It's a good thing she didn't say anything. Let him know. We'll see how he behaves. Lucy rubbed her temples. Maybe you won't want to talk to me at all after what I said. That wouldn't be a bad thing. Lucy smiled slightly. What if he suspects the baby is his? Naomi looked at Lucy thoughtfully. I don't think you go that far. I don't think you do that. Lucy sighed again. Okay, Naomi, I'm gonna go. You go to work, or I'll get you in trouble. Okay, Naomi said. If you need anything, call me. And good luck to you, Lucy said, and went home. She got into the building, called the elevator, and the door to the first-floor apartment opened. Lucy turned her head and met Harry's eyes. What an unexpected meeting. Lucy said snidely. Let's talk, he asked calmly. We don't care. We need to talk. You've probably figured out by now that I'm not going to let you go. Harry gestured her into his apartment. Lucy took a few steps into Harry's apartment without saying a word. What else can we talk about? She started from the doorstep. Stepping on Harry. Lucy, you want me to tell you everything in detail? Sarcastically, looking him straight in the eye, Lucy asked. I want to know your due date, Harry asked her clearly. Is that important to you? Very important, he replied. 26 weeks, Lucy said without preamble. Harry had already perused the internet, counted everything he needed. Now he stood there, afraid to ask the question that bothered him the most. You're asking me if this is your baby. Am I understanding you correctly? Lucy kept glaring at Harry. He couldn't say a word, he just blinked his eyes. Yours, Lucy answered honestly. Harry knelt down in front of Lucy, gently took her hands in his and began to kiss her. I'm sorry, if you can forgive me. I thought I was dreaming it all. I wasn't myself at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. Lucy pulled her hands out of his and began to wipe away the tears. Images of that unfortunate evening began to replay in her mind. Harry wrapped his arms around her waist and pressed his face lightly against her stomach as he continued to kneel in front of her. Harry, Lucy started to pull his hands away. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to decide, a lot to resolve. We're having a baby together. We'll move your things in with me tonight. He got up and looked fondly at Lucy. I've been looking for you ever since I first saw you. I've been drawn to you like a magnet. Harry traced Lucy's lips with his index finger. Lucy took his hand away again, turned her head so she wouldn't have to meet his eyes and see his happy face. Harry, I'm married, actually. Harry's face became serious and focused. Where's your husband? Why are you always alone? Are you telling me this on purpose to annoy me? He scrutinized Lucy's face and waited for an answer to his questions. Lucy sighed heavily. Why don't we go into the kitchen, sit down and talk over a cup of tea? Why are we standing in the hallway? You know there's no truth in feet. I'm sorry, Harry fussed and started to help Lucy take off her coat, then put her things in the closet and handed her his slippers. I'm sorry, I don't have any slippers for women. I live alone. Harry spread his hands apart and apologized to Lucy. Lucy looked around the kitchen. It's beautiful at your place. You can see at once that it's freshly repaired. It even smells a little bit of wallpaper glue and paint. Lucy smiled. Harry sat Lucy at the table, poured tea, put on the table a box of chocolates, cookies, a vase of fruit. He sat down opposite Lucy and looked at her questioningly. Now we can talk, he said, exhaling the air from his lungs, and continued to gaze tenderly at his companion. So what's going on with me and my husband? I still don't get it. He asked his question. I think I've made myself clear. I'm married. Lucy shrugged her shoulders and defiantly picked up her mug of tea. There was a ringing silence at the table for a while, even the ticking of the clock on the wall in the hall. Maybe it's not my child, but your husband's? Harry asked cautiously. Lucy drank her tea in silence, cursing herself in her heart. Why did I tell him everything? I have to justify myself to him. Then he'll want a DNA test to make sure. Lucy suddenly felt like getting up and leaving. She put the cup on the table and started to get up. Harry, I'm sorry, and never mind, none of what I said to you today was true. I'm sorry again, but I had a little fight with my husband this morning, and you just got in the way. I was just taking my mood out on you. I'll go, Lucy smiled guiltily. Harry continued to watch her with his mouth open. Finally, he came to his senses. Lucy, we're not in kindergarten. Let's talk. Can you tell me specifically if this is my baby or not? Lucy rolled her eyes and sighed again. She slumped back in her chair, put her hands on the table, and started rubbing her fingers together. You see, Harry, I have a very complicated relationship with my husband. If you have time and you're not in a hurry, I'm ready to talk to you and tell you everything. I'm all ears, sitting down and crossing my arms over my chest. Harry answered her. Well, listen, Lucy replied and began her story. After listening carefully to Lucy, Harry smiled and took her hands in his. So it's my baby after all, isn't it? Lucy, please don't take offense to me. I haven't told you my divorce story with my ex-wife yet. If you have time, I can tell you, Harry said, smiling and looking into her eyes. I'm in no hurry either. Lucy smiled. Well, listen, Harry laughed. Just keep in mind that this is not a story for the faint of heart. I'm warning you. After you raped me, Lucy emphasized the last word. My nerves are concrete, Lucy replied sarcastically and looked defiantly at Harry. I'll probably spend the rest of my life apologizing to you for that awful incident. Harry replied guiltily and lowered his eyes in shame. Okay, never mind. Start your story. I'm all ears. Lucy leaned back in her chair and picked up an apple. They sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Harry poured tea for Lucy and himself several times. Just water, because it was hot and Lucy was thirsty. She was always thirsty. When Harry finished his sad story, they were silent for a long time, each thinking about their own things. Now they knew everything about each other. It was Harry who came to his senses first. Lucy, what are we going to do about your husband? I hope you'll tell him everything. Harry, I've been trying to do that for a long time, but I don't have the guts. I keep putting it off because I'm embarrassed to tell him, so I keep lying to him. Lucy frowned and put her hand to her forehead. I'm going to try to talk to him today, especially since he started having affairs again. Lucy sighed heavily. I think he's seeing someone again, unsure of it. I think after he finds out the truth, he'll leave me. Lucy closed her eyes and rubbed her temples with her hands. I'm so ashamed of myself in front of my husband. Lucy's tears came involuntarily. But I just can't bear to carry this information. I just don't want to. Olechka, honey, move in with me today. I'm not kidding. I don't want to share you with your husband. Are you serious? Lucy gave Harry a puzzled look. Harry, I get it. You're stunned by the news I gave you today. But you don't know me at all. I don't know you either. Let's just take our time. First, I'll try to talk to Mark today and tell him everything. It's been an hour since Mark was supposed to come home from work, but he hadn't shown up. Lucy hadn't called. She hoped he was driving home and didn't want to distract him. After 2 more hours of waiting, dinner was getting cold, and Mark still hadn't shown up. Lucy dialed her husband's number on her cell phone, but Mark didn't answer. After a while, Lucy repeated the call, but a nasty voice answered that the subscriber was temporarily unavailable. Call back later. Lucy sighed deeply and tensely. Well, we'll just have to wait. Whatever time you get in, Mark, you and I are going to have a conversation today. Anyway, I'm not going to put it off any longer. Lucy turned on the TV and lay down on the couch. I got a text from Harry. What's up? Did you talk to your husband? Lucy smiled sadly and wrote back. He hasn't come home from work yet, and his cell phone is not available. Lucy put the phone next to her pillow and closed her eyes, startled by the phone ringing again. If you need anything, I'm on call 24 hours. Call me anytime. At the end of the message, Harry attached a smiley face with a kiss. Lucy smiled again and replied okay. She turned off her phone and dozed off. Through her sleep, Lucy heard the sound of the key turning in the lock on the front door. Lucy turned on her phone and looked at the time. I wonder what virgin he'll come up with this time, Lucy thought to herself and got up from the couch. Mark, what took you so long? Squinting at the light, she asked her husband calmly, without any hysterics. Baby, I'm sorry. Mark deliberately didn't look Lucy in the eye. There was a sense of shyness and insecurity in his awkward movements. Mark, have you been drinking and driving again? Lucy wrinkled her face at the smell of booze. What are you trying to do? Get your license suspended? Isn't the first time I've seen you do that? Baby, don't swear. It just happened. I had 1 glass of wine with the guys at the cafe. I didn't want to leave the car on the street. I decided to drive home at my own risk. Don't worry, I'm fine. Mark came over to Lucy and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. It's late. Go to bed. I'm gonna take a quick shower and go to bed. I have to get up early tomorrow. Mark looked at his wife and smiled guiltily. "Mark," Lucy said firmly, "I'm waiting for you. We need to talk." "About what? Because I'm late again?" "That too. I have a lot to tell you. I've been waiting all night to talk to you. There's no point in putting it off until later. So let's talk." Mark sat down on the couch and put his leg over his leg, took the remote, turned down the TV, and looked at Lucy defiantly. "Go ahead. I'm all ears." "Mark, let's just agree to be honest with each other tonight. No matter how bitter the truth is, we'll listen to each other and make our decisions." Mark sighed heavily. "It's a deal," he answered briefly. Lucy lowered her eyes and remained silent for a while, not knowing where to begin this difficult conversation for both of them. Mark was also silent and stared blankly at the TV screen. "Mark, you've got another girl again." "Lucy, don't start making things up." Mark started to justify himself with a note of irritation. "Mark, we agreed to tell the truth. Did you remember? You promised." Lucy watched her husband's reaction to her words. "Mark, please be honest. If you're feeling sorry for me because I'm pregnant, I assure you, you're doing it for nothing. Don't worry, it won't affect me or my baby's health. I can sense you're avoiding me, Mark. You're not interested in me. Am I right?" Lucy never took her eyes off her husband. She could see that he wanted to answer her, but he didn't dare. He didn't want to offend or disappoint her. Lucy realized she'd have to get the truth out of him, so she decided to be the first to tell him herself. "Mark, listen to me carefully, but please don't interrupt me. This is very hard for me to remember, but you need to know." Lucy paused and continued. "I should have told you a long time ago, so I wouldn't torture you, but I didn't dare. But don't worry, I would have told you anyway." Lucy lowered her eyes, put her hand lovingly on her tummy, stroked it gently, and smiled guiltily. "Are you ready to listen to me?" Mark waved his head indifferently. "Well, then listen. Maybe you'll hate me after this, but you have to know the truth." Mark listened to Lucy's story with open mouth and goggle eyes. His mouth dry, he coughed and swallowed his saliva several times. His tongue felt like it was stuck to his palate. When Lucy finished her story, Mark couldn't get a word out. After a long silence, Mark coughed and said in a hoarse voice, "So it's not my baby?" Lucy shook her head emphatically. "No, Mark, it's not your baby. I'm sorry, if you can forgive me." "That's a twist." Mark said it as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. Mark scratched his temples, then wrapped his arms around his head and closed his eyes. "Now I want to hear your story, Mark. It's your turn to tell the truth," Lucy said softly. "Lucy, I don't know what to say. I need to digest this information. To be honest, I didn't see this coming. I know it's not your fault, but I don't know how to act in this situation. Mark, just answer me. Are you over me?" "I don't know." Mark wouldn't let go of my head. His face was full of contempt and anger. "I haven't fallen out of love with you, Lucy, but now I have a muse. She inspires me. I'm interested in spending time with her," Mark said absently, thinking about something else. Suddenly, he turned his head sharply, looked at Lucy, then turned his gaze to her stomach. "Does this nigger know it's his baby?" he asked her, looking Lucy in the eyes. "I told him today." "Why did you do that?" shouted Mark, looking at his wife with anger. "I wonder what you're getting so excited about, Mark. You're walking around at your own pleasure, not thinking about me, not interested in my well-being. I call you, you don't answer. You don't even think that I might be sick and need your help. You can't even imagine that I don't meet a husband like that. Actually, I wasn't going to divorce you," Mark said ironically. "But I see you've already found a new husband." Mark got up and went to open the front door. "Mark, where are you going?" Lucy was scared. "I've got to kick that bastard's ass. I won't rest until I do. I'll make him answer for everything. He must answer for his vile act." Lucy ran up to her husband and managed to grab his arm. "Mark, you've got to sort yourself out first. You see, even if it was your baby, I'd still leave you. You think I don't know you've been at your muse's house for 2 nights instead of your part-time job? Mark, you're living your life. You're cheating on me. You're cheating on yourself. There's nothing stopping you. You know why?" "Why?" Mark answered in a disgruntled voice. "Because, Mark, you don't love me, and you never did. Because when you love a person, you always want to be with him, to breathe the same air, to take care of him, to spend every free moment with him. But with you and me, Mark, it's the exact opposite. We have nothing in common. We have our own interests. You and I exist apart from each other." Lucy stopped talking, sighed, and smiled bitterly. "You have a muse. What words?" "Mark, it's funny. Couldn't you just say that you've got another mistress and you're more interested in spending time with her than with me? Am I right, Mark?" Lucy looked at her husband and grinned bitterly. Tears welled up in her eyes. Mark made a sour expression. "Lucy, I'm in such a state right now that I can't think straight. You've knocked the ground out from under me. I need to think and decide if I can take in another man's child." Lucy laughed. "Mark, it's too late to think. I'm filing for divorce and letting you go with a light heart to your next muse, and that's my final decision. I'm sick of you cheating on me. The way you and I are living, we can't live like this. It's not a family anymore. It's a travesty of a family." Mark looked at Lucy with a detached look. It was obvious that the news had caught him off guard. In fact, Mark felt like a cuckold. No, Mark didn't blame Lucy. He knew she wasn't promiscuous and had always kept a warm home. But at the moment, he hated her. He wanted to be rude to his wife, to say all sorts of nasty things to her. It was only the fact that Lucy was pregnant that held him back. Mark gritted his teeth for air, so he wouldn't look like an egomaniac in front of his wife. Mark walked silently into the hall and plopped down on the couch. "I'll sleep here tonight," he said in a voice that didn't tolerate any objections. "Go to bed too. I've had enough for one night. I've got enough on my mind as it is. Let's continue our conversation tomorrow night. Good night," and turned away from Lucy and faced the pillow. In the morning, Lucy got up, and as if nothing had happened, she made Mark breakfast. It was obvious that he was in a foul mood. Mark forcefully shoved the omelet into himself and took a few sips of coffee, trying not to offend Lucy. Mark tried not to make eye contact with his wife. He wanted to get out of the house so that he could distract himself at work, calmly consider his future actions, and make the only right decision. In fact, Mark was thinking of divorcing his wife. He wasn't attracted to her as a woman anymore. He was constantly drawn to her. Yes, Lucy was a great hostess, but nothing more. And now that his wife has asked him to divorce her, Mark's feelings of possessiveness kicked in. No more crying and begging me to forgive her and take the child as my own. And she's being a goody-goody. Mark couldn't get over it. "We're so proud. Let's see how you'll sing when the baby's father rejects you." Mark wrinkled his face, remembering the conversation he had with his wife last night. She's counting on him. That's why she's so proud. I should go see that rapist today, have a heart-to-heart with him. Slapped him in the face a couple times so he doesn't touch other people's wives. At work, Mark was not himself. Several times he was approached by Svetlana, with whom he had recently developed a very close and romantic relationship. But even with Stataka, Mark was in no mood to talk to her today. "But I'm dating Spida now, and she has a child," Mark reasoned. "But it doesn't bother me. I'm cool with it. Why did it hit me so hard that Lucy wasn't pregnant by me?" Svataka's voice broke Mark from his sad thoughts. "Mark, I don't recognize you today. Who's upset you so much? Let's go in my place. I'll give you a massage." Sveta put her hands on his shoulders. Mark took her hands away and thoughtfully said, "I can't today, my wife is waiting for me, sorry." "When did it leave you?" laughed Sveta. Mark looked disdainfully at his mistress and without saying another word, went to his car. "You won't even take me home?" She shouted angrily in his direction. "You'll get there tonight on your own," Mark answered without turning around. Lucy looked out the window. There was a police car parked outside the building. Lucy had an uneasy feeling. She threw on her coat, went out into the building, and called the elevator. On the first floor, the door opened and out came the policeman who had been called by Harry's neighbor. The cops came to calm down two troublemakers who were fighting. They brought out Harry and Mark in handcuffs. Mark had a bruised eyebrow. Harry had a busted lip and blood oozing from it. When he saw Lucy, Harry stopped, looked at her guiltily, lifted both cuffed hands, and began to wipe the blood oozing from his lip with one hand. "Lucy, it's okay. Don't worry. We'll be fine. We'll be out of here soon." Harry handed her the keys to the apartment. "Close the door, please. You can keep the keys." Mark, who was watching, snorted and walked away without a word. Lucy, stammering a little, asked the man in the police uniform a question. Tell me, do you take them to the station? Yes, we're taking them to the police station as public order offenders, the policeman said calmly. They will sit in the monkey house for a while, calm down, we'll draw up a report, and then we'll see how they behave. If they behave well and the documents are all in order, we will release them in 3 hours, and if they continue to rage, we can detain them for longer. Don't worry, girl. Everything's gonna be all right. He gave Lucy a meaningful look. They fought over you, I take it. Lucy lowered her eyes and blushed like a red tomato and answered, I don't know, maybe it was me. Just as the policeman had promised. At the police station, Harry and Mark were cited and released after 3 hours with a lecture on how to behave. Mark went home and without saying a word, went straight to the bathroom. Lucy looked out the window. Harry was sitting on a bench by the front door. Lucy threw on her coat, came downstairs and handed Harry her keys. Harry, how are you feeling? Lucy asked in a worried voice. I'm fine. Harry smiled sorely and touched his busted lip. I know what Mark's like, man to man. I was just defending myself. I didn't want to fight him. I'd asked him to talk, but I couldn't stop your husband. Harry touched his lip again, shook his head. He's got a pretty good punch. Harry raised his eyes and looked at Lucy. Lucy, I told him I wouldn't let my child be raised by a strange uncle. He watched Lucy's reaction carefully. I want to raise my daughter myself, to bathe her, to wash her diapers, to buy her diapers, pacifiers, cradles. Harry stopped talking and kept looking at Lucy with that guilty look in his eyes. Lucy, one word from you and I'll move all your stuff into my apartment. From his eloquent look, Lucy realized that Harry was determined to take her back to his apartment, to take her back to this place and never let her go anywhere else. Harry, thank you so much for being there for me in my time of need. I can't deny I'm very pleased to have your tremendous support, but I need to clear the air with Mark. Give me time to think, to talk to Mark. Harry gently took her hand and pressed it to his cheek. Think, but not for too long, because I'm gonna burn like a match while I wait for you. I'll give you 24 hours. I can't take much more than that. Lucy laughed. Harry, I have to go. She released her hand from his embrace, gently patted him on the head, and without another word, turned and walked home. Lucy went home. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table drinking brandy in silence. Mark, why did you have to pick a fight? Well, I can understand it, if you were a good family man. Mark took a lemon slice in his mouth, wrinkled his face. I just realized I'm not ready to lose you, but I want you to be happy. It's been 3 years. Mom, Dad's gone. Masha ran headlong into her father's arms. Harry took her in his arms and threw her high. Hello, my beautiful girl. He kissed her first on one cheek, then the other, with great love. He lowered her from his arms to the floor. Lucy came over and kissed her husband on the cheek. Daddy, we're looking forward to seeing you. We'll feed you and go for a walk. You promised Masha to fly the paper kite her godmother gave her today. Masha started jumping with joy. I want a kite. Harry looked tenderly at his daughter. Understood, Comrade Commander. I'll be quick, he said and winked at his daughter. Lucy, with a thoughtful look, watched her husband, who enjoyed eating and tried to pay attention to her favorite daughter. Masha was happy to tell her father how she had helped her mother prepare dinner. Harry listened attentively and praised her for helping her mom. Harry, Lucy interrupted their conversation. He could hardly take his eyes off his daughter's story. Something's wrong, Harry asked worriedly. We're having a baby. I'm pregnant. Harry put the cutlery on the table, stood up and hugged his wife tenderly. Thank you, my love. I've wanted to hear you say that for so long.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.